Hello! The following is a recording of a presentation I gave at the 13th Zurich Hardware Meetup in December 2024. I share my perspective on collecting and repairing retro computers and show some common types of problems one does typically encounter when dealing with old hardware. A big thank you to the organizers of the meetup and Switzerland Innovation Park Zurich for inviting me onto their stage and for recording the whole thing. Thank you for your interest. Now, enjoy! I'm Nikolai. Thanks for having me. This presentation is actually the first how I heard about this meetup happening. And I'll get to talk about my passion, which is retro hardware. My passion lives in the past. That's odd. But to kick off, I'll need to switch the presentation, but also have this fancy camera, which shall set the stage. So if you don't mind, I shall take a quick picture. Anyone shy of pictures? I mean, there's 2 pixels reserved for the entire audience. So I'll just, oops. Yeah, it's different gear than what we have on stage. Oh, and the angle is very narrow. 3, 2, 1, great, thank you very much. All right, so my presentation today is about repairing retro hardware because stuff's old, stuff breaks. My background is actually in software. So I worked as a software engineer for 11 years. Currently taking a break and trying to devote more time to this. So maybe I should start first. How did I get into retro tinkering and what is it even? So my history started when my dad got our first computer, a used Macintosh Plus when I was 5. It was graphical, so actually approachable as a kid. I still have it, it still works, just needed some minor maintenance to some broken solder joints. Very common with these. So if you find one where the screen is intermittent, that's a bargain because it's a cheap fix. Then a year later, or maybe 2, this is me, Christmas Eve 94, we got a 386 computer. Me, that's my brother and me. And this was at a time where everyone already had Pentiums, so we were 2 generations behind. The computer, that is. And it was already very outdated at the time, and which kind of sucks, right? Because we wanted to play games, but the computer is very old, and we're kids with no money, so how do we make the games run? Well, there's 2 options. Buy new hardware, which we can't afford, or learn how to teach our old crap some new tricks. So we tried the latter, and turns out that's actually pretty fun. That's, oh, I ruined the animation there. So that's still why I do it today. Like, it was fun back then, and it is still fun today. I think now there's a thick coat of nostalgia on top of it. So just like reliving childhood memories of making old hardware jump through hoops. Also, all the stuff I ogled in magazines and couldn't afford, I can now get it because people are either throwing it away or I actually earned money. And fixing stuff is basically just like puzzles for nerds. I mean, I guess I don't need to tell anyone here that this is like why we're here, right? Fixing stuff and figuring out why it's broken. That's sometimes fun. It's also an awesome craft. Like, it brings together cool communities. It also teaches you, I found, generally coming up with creative solutions, because very often in life you have improper tools or whatever at your disposal, but you still need to get it done, right? So tinkering tells you that. And it can be sustainable. Can. That's where the animation was broken. Is retro computing really sustainable? I mean, you're fiddling with old crap, but on the surface, it doesn't really look like it. It's highly unlikely that this 30-plus-year-old computer will fulfill a purpose that you would buy a new computer for, right? If you want to run a web server, unless the idea is that it does run from a floppy disk, probably better get a new piece of hardware. Also, modern tech is more likely to use less energy or, like just be more efficient at doing the jobs, so that it might still probably be a better idea to get something modern. And if you hoard all your stuff at home, like some people do, then these rare materials don't get into recycling and don't get used to make new stuff. So kind of looks bad, right? But you might have guessed this. There are also some upsides. I would say it certainly teaches you skills and an attitude that can make your, I guess, everyday proceedings really make a difference. So you learn to repair stuff that you might otherwise replace because it broke. Or for example, if you have an old laptop that is 7 or 8 years old, it's not enough for your company use, and it's not good enough for gaming. But someone just going to university taking notes, perfectly fine. They don't need to buy a new cheap laptop. Also, as a hobby, I find it's exceptionally great because your resource footprint is basically playing with other people's trash. I guess it doesn't get more sustainable than that, right? Cool. So this for an intro, what I consider retro computing and what is it, that got me in there. But now, what is it that I do? I collect, I fix, I play, I exhibit. There's one machine over there that plays music and becomes very annoying if you stay there for long enough. And I try not to hoard tech. That might give you an idea where this is going. But let's get there one step at a time. The major challenge with collecting old computers is that you can quickly have very many of those because they're plentiful, they're often cheap or free if you know the right people. There are exceptions. For example, someone sold this computer for 18K on eBay. Okay, sure. But yeah, you often get them for free. The other challenge is that people might be throwing them out if you don't take them. So you're basically required to save them, right? So now they're your problem. But on the other end, you can learn how to fix something, so that might be fun. And there can be actual good reasons, like stuff looking very cool. I consider this to be one of these, or this like amber glowing display, or just historically relevant that you're like, this belongs in a museum or my basement. And once you're known in the scene, this really can get out of hand. This is an email I got like last week. It was like, hey, I heard you collect old stuff. I have 2 shelves full. Do you want them for free? I mean, how would I say no to that, right? But you can also see this problem of this stuff has to live somewhere. Luckily, I live in Schaffhausen, not in Zurich, so it's a bit more affordable to have this problem, but still. There is a different talk about how I try to organize this. It's linked in the slide in the links, which I hope still work, but yeah, I won't bore you with that right now. So finally, we're getting towards the fixing. What does it mean? This stuff is like 30 to 50 years old, so fixing involves soldering, using oscilloscopes. When you get a fancy hot air gun, don't melt the wrong things with it. Very easy to do. You also learn how to read schematics or how to test individual components. I pretty much knew none of these things, and I've watched people do it on YouTube and read forum posts, so I'm pretty sure I do it all wrong, but some things work out. So, I'm a hobbyist, not a professional. On the right-hand side, there's my workbench in 2011 when I got into it. You see cool tools and absolutely no organization. Then eventually I built myself a workbench, which looks slightly better and certainly is a place more inviting to tinker on. And I learned a bit about woodworking. So what do I actually do when I get a new thing? Like here's the actual repairing stuff. So at first I look at the stuff and I would, do I mind touching this? That's when you learn about rubber. Rubber gets really nasty after 30, 40 years. This used to be rubber feet under the laptop, but they turn into runny chewing gum. Very disgusting. Lots of paper towels and window cleaner and isopropyl alcohol. We'll get rid of this, but I'm not handling it when it looks like this. Once it's okay to touch, I open it up. It's like, is there anything obvious wrong? And there you have to be careful. Plastic doesn't like aging, so stuff can just break when you try to open it. So fixing it might make things worse. And there are some examples that you might find. On the left-hand side is the motherboard of a Macintosh SE30. Very cool machine, very unhappy lithium battery for storing the clock. And those things, when they deplete after a while, they just burst and spew their guts everywhere. And on the right-hand side, you can see once I was done cleaning up, there used to be pads or vias or components. Like, yeah, I gave up on that one. My low skills and the 6 layers in the board didn't help. But there are people who are much more awesome. This just is, that's not my picture, but this is someone who basically took Apple schematics and rebuilt the entire mainboard from these schematics. So if you move over the stuff that wasn't destroyed and replace the stuff you can still buy today, you get a functional machine again. So very cool. I got one of these boards, but gave it with a disaster to a friend who was more motivated than I am. But yeah, really cool stuff. This is where the retro community really goes into professional grade work. This is more like my stuff. This is a 486 motherboard I recently got. You can see there is this whole, oops, sorry, where there used to be a battery. This was nickel cadmium, also corrosive, but less explosive. So that's nice. So the only damage that occurred were these 2 traces. It's a bit hard to say. There's one wire that I ran here and another tiny one that I ran there before I realized it's really, really tiny and hard to work with. And that actually managed to fix it. these two traces were cut, but now the keyboard that is using these traces works again. So woohoo! All right, so once the internal obvious disasters are taken care of, it's like, okay, the power supply, if that's bad and you turn it on and it sends 30 volts where 5 volts should be, smoke and sadness. So I have a few sacrificial devices, say an old hard disk, that I can put to the power supply, turn it on, and if the smoke releases from that thing, woohoo, right? It was already dead before. Oops. Ah, okay. Right, yeah. And if that turns out to not be correct, then you can look inside, and that's what I did in this case, and I found a puddle of liquid at the bottom of a power supply. Those don't come stock from the factory. So turns out nearly all of the capacitors have leaked their electrolyte. So I took them all out, carefully read all the values of them, researched what is the current modern day replacement. After 40 years, the same are not made anymore. Then decided to upload this to the Internet Archive because I did all the work. I hardly found any information on this device on the internet, so maybe there's some other poor sucker who might enjoy getting this information. Turns out, yes! A month later, I got a notification from the VC, the Vintage Computer Federation forums, where I posted about my repair, and someone said, thanks, I just got this thing, I don't find any information except for yours. And it was like, oh, fantastic. This is why I do it, like, very satisfying. Okay, once I consider the power supply to be good, well, crank the damn thing, and I hope. Ta-da! Yeah, so, you know, after spending, I don't know how many days and, oops, ridiculous amounts of shipping cost and everything, it's working again. There's another surprise that I want to call out specifically. If you get an old device from the 80s or 90s, it might have one of these tasty Rifa capacitors. They're so infamous that Wikipedia tells you about it. Rifa was a Finnish company that I think made lots, or still makes capacitors. But yeah, so it's this 70s, 80s equipment that uses them for, I think, line level noise filtering, which are words, but I don't understand what they mean. And those will work for a few minutes until they catastrophically go boom. And it smells like hell. It smells for days. Even if you get the thing out, that smell is made of something that just doesn't go away. But the good thing is they're completely optional. You can just remove them or buy modern day replacements of these bombs, and then the device will work. But it makes a hell of a smoke and a stink. So yeah, if you get an oscilloscope from the 70s or 80s, maybe open it and check that stuff. Because yeah, you can just snip them out. Okay, power supply is on. It works. So now then this kind of gets less critical. Now you can check whether stuff is actually working, and I forgot what it is. Okay, for example, a hard disk doesn't work. It only works if you give the head a little, you know, help to start. It's like, why is this? How did the hard drive head get weak? Well, turns out, rubber again. This used to be a rubber bumper, but it now looks like chewing gum or Nutella or something, right? So it is completely liquefied, more or less. So how to fix that? Well, you remove all the smear inside the hard disk, and then either wrap it in tape or take the whole, what used to be rubber out and wrap some tape around it so you get equal thickness, button the whole thing up, and ignore what people have always been telling you is like, if you open a hard disk, it's dead. Well, now it lives. It was dead before. So, you know, it's dead. You might take your chance. And unless you slip with a screwdriver and gouge the top platter, which I certainly have never done, but now have a hard disk that has a third of its capacity. And it still works. Yeah, more rubber breaking down. I'll speed this up a bit. There's floppy drives that use rubber bells. And this is where I think this hobby just gets amazing. I forgot there's more audio. Yeah. So this is my 3D printer printing a new drive belt out of pixels, apparently, and TPU, which is a flexible material. And apparently the tolerances are okay, that you can just like print a few loops of this belt, finagle it around the motor. Looks okay, doesn't it? I was so proud of this, I made my first Instagram video, so please accept my apologies for the terrible aspect ratio. But do you remember these sounds? And it's booting. Starten von MS-DOS, very German. But yes, so that fixed it. I couldn't believe it. Because I ordered these belts on eBay before, they were like 10 euros, not much, but you need to have them shipped. There's like 10 euros for every floppy drive. Now I can fix those myself. Other stuff you might find is that just chips have degraded. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it is. Chips age and go bad, whether it's corrosion or I guess just time. And you might get memory errors. Or if you have a Commodore 64, apparently every other chip in these things normally dies one way or another. So yeah, but there are lots of replacements or old stock that you can use to fix those. That's where then the schematics and the oscilloscopes kind of enter the equation in your debugging.
All right, and once all this stuff is working, at the end is like cleaning it.
And this is like the victory lap, because you're done with it, you just make it nice and shiny so you know that you can take it somewhere and show it to people without them being disgusted at how you live. It's really cool. And this is usually the cycle that I use to go through my devices. And especially the step number 2 is really important. Like, don't kill what you're trying to preserve by just running the 40-year-old power supply. Yeah, and just quickly, I think I said this, bad power supplies can be sad. Also, lubrication often goes sticky, so floppy disk drives, like, clean all the lubrication and re-lubricate. There is glue that becomes hygroscopic over time, and they use it to glue stuff in power supplies. So eventually, over time, these become conductive. So you get random connections in your power supply. Good fun. Plastic breaking. Dead batteries often
result in the loss of configuration, and if you can't find the configuration program,
you're kind of screwed. That's where these web forums are really helpful. And just like the physical condition, I think I spoke about that. So where do you start if you're stumped? There's tons of content online, and as I said, there's forums, there's websites that archive documentation and software specifically. So this manual of the computer you threw away in the 90s, they have it. And it's really, really helpful to be able to understand the expected state of things. And how my journey started, retro computing YouTube channels. You can learn the general technique, also common faults, and sometimes just see someone demo a machine that you have on your bench that doesn't work. So you can see, okay, if it is working, it should do this and that, and mine doesn't. So that also helps. The QR code is something new I tried on my website, retro.iknop.de/links. I put all the links I would normally put in here, but you can't click them. I tried. So yeah, there's some.
For all of these, there's a bunch of examples if you want to follow up.
All right, conclusion. Before I let you off the hook. First, there's the Vintage Computer Festival in Zurich in January, and I just happen to be a co-organizer of it, in case you weren't able to tell by all the spam around here. So if this sounds mildly interesting to you, this might be wildly interesting. So it's January, Saturday, Sunday, very central in Zurich, Kraftwerk Sellnau, and I think we have devices from the, I guess the 40s. We have an Enigma, I think, there, or a replica at least, all the way to the 2000s, and it's great fun. So yeah, please go there and make me happy. And the other request that I have is, like, if you have retro stuff and some of this sounds familiar with like batteries or stuff that degraded, try to remove any battery from devices that you store. And ideally run them every now and then, because, for example, capacitors, if they get turned on
frequently, I think this makes them degrade much less slowly.
Don't store them in damp cellars and hot attics. And coming back to the topic of sustainability, consider redistributing or reusing before recycling. Recycling is good, but a thing that you just can no longer use, giving it to someone else, is probably not great news. But yeah, it's easy-ish to do on Ricardo or Tutti if you don't know it, or just ask around in your community. One thing I learned recently is that in Zurich, they have these mobile recycling things that replace the electro tram, or what they called it. They have a Tauschplatz, which is a table where you can put stuff you no longer want, and other people can pick it up, or they'll recycle it at the end of the day. So it gets one last chance of being appreciated. I'll repeat my ad roll for the Vintage Computer Festival. And if you have old computers or CRT monitors to get rid of, please enable my hoarding problem. Thank you.